Good afternoon, everyone. What lies behind the door for 2022? Waves of amplification. First it was the fertilizer shortages, now it's the herbicide shortages. And if you can't switch to Group 27 or Group 4 products with no glyphosate, hey, you can go back to the old way, chop the weeds down before they go to seeds, electrocute or flame them in the field. Herbicide classifications, pigment inhibitors, growth regulators. It's going to be a chemistry set in the field trying to get the right combo. Hyperinflation, 11 million job openings, and an energy crisis. Sound familiar? It's like Jimmy Carter in the 1970s all over again. Americans are paying twice as much at the gas pump and the grocery store. The Democrats control all three branches of government, and there's just a couple of questions you need to ask yourself. Do you think you'll be better off in 2022 than you have been in 2021? And do you think the stock market will trade higher the next 3 years than it did from 2016 to 2020? If the answer is no, learn how simple it is to add physical gold and silver to your portfolio ahead of the rise in inflation and predicted price rises. Patriot Gold Group has the no fee for life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold and silver. Call 1-800-356-4470 and get a free investor guide today. And with the knowledge that Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold IRA dealer from 2016 to present, click on the link in the description box below for more information. And now on with the video. And what does 2022 hold? Amplification from 2021 and 20. These memes are so perfect to describe what is coming, what the unknowns are, and what you might want to prepare for. And these memes were from Bitcoin Daily View, Craig Simpson, Radiant Creators. You can find them right over on Telegram. You know, being a tiny little surfer in the ocean on the right image there, 2020, and then scratching over that. And then if you did scratch over 2021 without getting pummeled, Godzilla awaits. But what we know for sure so far is the fertilizer prices continue to rise to the stratosphere, and now the inavailability is confirmed. This should be a wake-up call for the planet. Chief Executive, CF Industries, with the bullhorn, shortages into 2023, and the research over the last month and a half into this issue, looking at about 12% declines. And we know just simple fact, less fertilizer, less food produced. Now, that's a subset of known variable, what's going to happen, 12% decline. A lot of farmers are running out there looking for different types of manures now, and chicken, cow, whatever you can get from the cattle, dairy, and swine, poultry industries to put on the field. But that's pretty tight already because a lot of farmers are doing that. It's not like there's an abundant supply out there where they're just going to switch magically and everybody will have manure again. That's already an incredibly tight supply market. But now we need to add in something else that's finally starting to hit the airwaves here. These herbicide shortages are inbound as well, to the point where they're trying to tell farmers here at Successful Farming how to manage without using glyphosate or glufo. They're saying you got to really bump up your pre and post emergence residual herbicide game. And if you can't get the two king daddies on the block for weed control throughout the agricultural industry, you're going to have to switch over to Group 4 and Group 27 or Group 2 commonly available active ingredients for now. What do you think the farmers are going to do if they can't get the Roundup or glyphosate or whatever brand name is manufacturing that? They're all going to switch at the same time. Then there'll be a run on these lesser players in the game. So the pigment inhibitors, I know Shield X and Callisto, I've seen those in my local farm co-op. It targets one specific function of the plant, just like this, the growth regulators. Now, the 2,4-D was a replacement for Cornerstone, which I use on the gravel driveway, especially in the back field. But then we come over to these amino acid inhibitors. So if I was to stop amino acid production in your body, what do you think would happen? Well, there's all of this category here, group 2, that does exactly that. So now we're looking at a massive chemistry set here where the farmers are going to start mixing and blending these together to hopefully come out with some effect to reduce weeds post-emergence, as after the soybean, for example, comes out, it's in the leafy growth stage. So we're going to go back to our grandparents' time here on what they're suggesting you can do if you can't get a hold of even the herbicides. So at least 2 of the sides of the triangle that hold up modern agriculture, fertilizer and weed and pest control, shortages globally. Options they're giving are chopping machinery that prevents the weeds from going to seed, which means you need to run another machine out in the field to go chop those weeds, more fuel input, flaming the weeds, propane blower on the back of that, burn the weeds, burn the seeds down. Cover crops that smother weeds, well, that involves a whole nother gamut of getting seed and then planting it, more fuel inputs. And electrocuting weeds to stop seeds from depositing in the soil. Okay, these are multi-year approaches to what's going on. And the amount of fuel that would be required for that and specialized machinery. Stepping over to the soybeans, what was previously referenced about everything was for growing corn. There are some possible substitutes and things that can be done. But in Brazil, they're just stepping away from corn entirely, moving over to beans. Let's look at beans. Soybeans, a more difficult task. More difficult than corn, but not impossible. It is possible. Maybe. And what do you do without glyphosate in the fields? Or glufo? Glufo. Whatever one you want. They're both not going to be at the levels that they need to be. So apparently just the largest of the mega farms are going to get that, especially if they forward contract out and have already a supply established with the producer over a decade, 2 decades, whatever it would be. And then an indication of what it looks like in the field without proper weed control to the left and what it looks like with weed control to the right. You need herbicides for that. What will the yield decline be? And then when you're going to harvest that, what kind of post-process will be added to remove all that unwanted vegetation and weeds that don't go through? Gumming up the works, if you will. Because they put it out straight here. I like the way that successful farming, they really give you the problem and then they talk about the solutions. They're telling all the farmers, you need to pull back, and I mean really pull back on what you're going to lay down in the weeds this year. You're going to have to get out in the fields and do a lot of pre-preparation for this. Old days that you sprayed everything and it was done, those are far over. Not going to work like that moving forward, period. And they're stating this in the article. That's why I'm spending so much time with it. The transition in agriculture has begun right now. So these first couple years of the switchover until they get these new mechanisms and systems in place, protocols, there's going to be some difficulty. And the reason they're talking about cutting some of the bigger weeds is the amount of herbicide can only target smaller weeds. That's it. Targeting big weeds, that's not an option any longer at all. Take it off your list. Don't even think about it. Put it in the dustbin of history. And your new field practices are going small weeds, control the large ones, and reduce the label rate of the herbicide, which means use less, stretch it. Because they were talking about, co-ops used to go out and do 50 or 100,000 acres at a time, limited time, so they would just lay it down thick and heavy. There's never been a shortage. So large weeds, they would see which ones were still standing after an application or two, and then go back out and get those. Well, what's happened with so much usage of these herbicides, there are now 437 herbicide-resistant weed biotypes or species. I don't know how this is really going to mix in here, because if they move away from the strongest back to something a little bit weaker and mixing and blending to try to test it out to see which really works on the field for the best weed control in this crop species, in this latitude, this soil type, etc., that's a long time to play chemistry set while your food's not being grown. But if you look at the list here, the ones that are used quite frequently in Tennessee that are the most commonly available that you can get in a farm co-op, atrazine, Roundup, glyphosate, that whole range there, the 2,4-D, the Cornerstone, which is now replaced by 2,4-D, and the Callisto. The others I'm not so familiar with, but everyone is quickly going to need to become familiar with those. Moving on to diesel fuel prices. If you're going to have to go through your field multiple times to control the weeds before you actually apply any herbicide, we've seen higher prices in the financial crisis of 2008 and 9 and the run-up in food, as well as 2011 through 13. Now, diesel prices have been higher, those, but it's creeping forward here as well. We're getting into another run of higher prices affecting everything. And what's so strange is these old tractors that usually are depreciated in a farm running expense are actually increasing in value now. So the trajectory is the increase on the top dotted line at $342,000, and this would be for a example 2017 tractor. Instead of depreciating down to $228,000 as normal, the prices on the machines are rising. So every possible input that you can put into farming is rising, and everywhere you look across the landscape, there are shortages. What is that going to do for us this year? And these topics I do discuss more freely in my podcast, Mini Ice Age Conversations. And you can find that anywhere podcasts are hosted across the net. 30-minute segments, more in-depth, deeper discussion without having to worry about the sensors. Hope you got something out of the video. All the links are in the description box below so you can chase down some more of these leads and do your own research and information, number crunching. I do hope you got something out of the video, and I'll see you next time.